My only regret is that my father is not here. Dad passed away in 2001. And he's the reason I came to Morehouse. Although he didn't attend himself, in 1968, he told me to sit and watch the funeral ceremony of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. As many of you know, that ceremony that began at Ebenezer Baptist Church processed to this campus. And I urge all of our guests to be sure to walk over to the Century campus and to see that sacred ground where Dr. King walked as a student and where our sixth president, Benjamin Elijah Mays, delivered the eulogy that day. As I sat watching with my father, he said at the end, "This is where I want you to go to college." 3 years later, I stepped off of a Greyhound bus here with my mother. And I like to tell the story of how she made that long bus ride back to Chicago by herself. When she arrived, she called our cousin, Reverend Walter Battle, and told him tearfully she had just left her child at Morehouse. I think she said her baby. And he listened to her and he responded. He said, "Dorothy, listen to what you are saying. Some mothers are weeping today because they've left their sons in a morgue. And there's some mothers crying today, they left sons in jail. You left a boy at Morehouse." Today we gather not so much for one person's inauguration as for an institution's academic and moral diagnosis. For I believe an inauguration should be a moral checkpoint for all of us to ask, does Morehouse remain committed to the lofty mission that set her course back in 1867? Is Morehouse making good on the ancestors' investments of prayer, money, and hope? I'm here today to say that thanks to the collective investment of all of our previous and current stakeholders, Morehouse stands on a firm foundation. Morehouse is as strong as she has ever been, and Morehouse is prepared to march forward as one of the nation's premier liberal arts institutions. I'd like to declare today that Morehouse will prepare 21st century Morehouse men. And I'd like to define those Morehouse men as Renaissance men with a social conscience. The vision for a Renaissance emerges from listening to Morehouse, feeling Morehouse, and walking her sacred grounds for over 35 years, and more intensively during the past 8 months. Indeed, my overriding sentiment during the past 8 months is that Morehouse is her traditions, her people, and her dreams. In fact, we cannot talk about the Morehouse man as a Renaissance man until we understand the institutional DNA manifest in her traditions, her people, and her dreams. The historian Yaroslav Pelikan has written that tradition is the living faith of the dead, while traditionalism is the dead faith of the living. Just up the hill from where we now sit, there is a building called Graves Hall. It is named in honor of our second president, Samuel L. Graves. Graves is our best known and oldest building. Its pyramid-like steeple forms the trademark or logo that you see in our literature. It's even inspired that gesture Morehouse men used to represent our pride and belonging. The building was constructed in 1885. And you should also know that, as I noted, that the Century campus in front of Graves is where Dr. King's funeral took place. That same space was the site of an historic Civil War battle and the burial ground for fallen Confederate soldiers. Generations of Morehouse students who were privileged to live there, They have their own, we have our own special tales of joy and sorrow. And we won't bore you with those today, but listen to the words spoken by a Morehouse alumnus, quoted by Dr. Otis Moss in his founder's convocation address yesterday. These are the words of alumnus Reverend C.T. Walker at the dedication of Graves Hall, 1885. Let this building rise till it meet the sun in his coming. Let the earlier light of the morning gild it, and parting day linger and play on its summit. So may the fame of this institution spread all over this broad land and even upon the burning sands of Africa. May her trained sons wave the banner of the cross. Let its fame rise until the men sent forth shall cultivate literature and read, in the press, in the schoolroom, on the platform, and in the pulpit. Let it rise until its fame and thorough work shall surpass the expectations of its founders and friends, the pride of the Negro Baptists of Georgia, and an intellectual lighthouse for the race. Let the men who go forth from these walls, prepared for high work, publish the fame of this institution by their varied knowledge and enlarged views, by their fixedness of purpose and their earnest desire to bless fallen humanity and write their name in bright letters in the temple of fame, end quote. Another great tradition is the singing of the college hymn. We don't simply sing the Morehouse hymn, we manifest it. You will see at the end of this ceremony that we clutch hands in a crossover fashion and we present each of the three stanzas as a moral drama in 3 acts. There is a pledge, dear old Morehouse, we have pledged our lives to thee. There is a plea, true forever, to old Morehouse may we be, so to bind each son the other into ties more brotherly. And there is a prayer delivered in crescendo. Holy Spirit, make us steadfast, honest, true, to old Morehouse and her ideals, and in all things that we do. But again, traditions can live only if people wish to extend the living faith of the dead. Morehouse is also her people. Every Morehouse generation has produced its own saints, heroes, and heroines. Talk to any Morehouse alumnus or faculty member or staff person, and you'll hear about the special people of yesterday. But we have some extraordinary people with us now as well. Georgia Rolex is Morehouse. She is the college receptionist and sits on point here in Gloucester Hall, welcoming the public and instructing students to turn off their cell phones. What they may not realize is that every morning, Ms. Rolex prays for every student on this campus. Tobe Johnson is Morehouse. He was a young political science professor when I first arrived at Morehouse, both wee lads. But through his teaching and mentoring of students, he's one of the many who nurture our collective memory of the astounding era of President Mays. Ezekiel Phillips is Morehouse. Ezekiel is a freshman who negotiated the dangerous streets of South Central Los Angeles and survived a few regrettable decisions. He saw Morehouse as a promised land for him. A protege of Tavis Smiley's, Ezekiel has embraced the ideal of a man of Morehouse. And I found him at 11:30 p.m. in Douglas Hall studying. He says that he's surrounded at Morehouse by high-achieving men. And in order not to stand out, he has to study and strive for excellence. Josh Packwood is Morehouse. Josh is a graduating senior on his way to Goldman Sachs on Wall Street. He happens to be Euro-American and brings much appreciated diversity to our campus. This year, Josh was one of two Morehouse finalists for the Rhodes Scholarship. But just 3 days before his interview, Josh's father died. He had every reason to lose focus and abandon hope, but true forever to old Morehouse tradition, he doubled his determination and represented us with great distinction. Morehouse is its people and its traditions, but every year 150 of our students are unable to return to begin their junior or senior years solely because of financial reasons. They're smart enough to be here, but often as little as $5,000 separate them from their aspirations to become Morehouse men. But thanks to the commitment and generosity of our terrific board, Morehouse is working hard now to solve this challenge. And we call upon friends to assist in providing gap funding to help these students cross the finish line. People fortified by noble tradition are empowered to dream, and dream big. Consider 3 of our dreams. Morehouse is the proud steward of the Morehouse College Martin Luther King Jr. collection. It is a treasure trove of 10,000 personal papers, books, and other memorabilia. Currently housed and cared for by the college's jointly owned Robert W. Woodruff Library, we dream of becoming a national resource for materials on ethical dimensions of the civil rights movement. We dream of housing Dr. King's collection, but in addition, preserving and presenting the memorabilia and archives of other civil rights giants like Andrew Young, Joseph Lowry, Benjamin Mays, and the following Morehouse men: Sam Williams, Maynard Jackson, Julian Bond, Amos Brown, and Howard Thurman. Dean Lawrence Carter and Professor Skip Mason have been custodians of an extraordinary collection of college archives that we're anxious to properly archive and share with the world. And I invite you to our Douglas Hall to view some of our archives today. Second, this Martin Luther King Jr. International Chapel, where most of us now gather, is one of the city's most revered gathering sites for special events. Nelson Mandela stood here and received 38 honorary degrees in 1 hour. Bishop Tutu collected $14,000 on the spot right here to continue his protest against apartheid. Some of America's greatest preachers have stood behind our sacred podium. Great performers such as Stevie Wonder and Leontine Price have adorned this stage. And tonight, our world-class Morehouse College Glee Club will raise the roof with their powerful voices, along with the lovely mezzo-soprano Denise Graves, in a free concert. But for all of its glory, this chapel, there are only 2,501 seats. There are 2,850 Morehouse men. You do the math. If the president wished to gather and address the entire student body, it could not happen here. And so we are dreaming of and planning for a renovated and expanded chapel that will enable us to expand our character development and moral education programs. We hope to welcome you soon to a new revised standard version of the Martin Luther King Chapel. The third, Morehouse men deserve a state-of-the-art student center with attractive new student housing. We want to provide a safe and secure and attractive environment for college-appropriate socializing. Our dreams and plans include transforming and upgrading our campus to appeal to 21st century student expectations and campus needs. But with all of the structural modifications that we anticipate, The fundamental resource of Morehouse College lies still in preparing its students to lead a global renaissance. Renaissance is an intriguing concept. It means rebirth. Amidst the difficult days of racial injustice during the early 20th century, there emerged in Harlem, New York, a group of men and women who began to document and celebrate the strength, beauty, and intelligence, the spirit of their people. That cultural phenomena came to be known as the Harlem Renaissance. That era gave the world Langston Hughes, James Weldon Johnson, and Zora Neale Hurston. They gave us sophisticated explorations of Black life and culture that revealed and stimulated new confidence and pride throughout the village. Producing Renaissance men with a social conscience is a bold and vitally important agenda in our contemporary cultural situation where death and despair prevail. To become a Renaissance man is to become broadly educated and conversant with the classic texts and the large questions that define the disciplines in the arts and sciences. The Renaissance man or woman should know these classics, but should also interrogate the concept of classic to ensure that the canon or roster of classics expands to include all of the voices of great people who have been excluded from the narrow Western roster of great texts. Renaissance men will expand the canon while contributing to a revised global canon of cherished human knowledge and achievement. The social conscience is different from, but incorporates a personal, private conscience. The personal conscience is the voice of morality and right reason that informs us of what is right and good, true and praiseworthy for individuals. However, many people possess a robust personal conscience, but do little to relieve the suffering of others. They manage to live comfortably with American opulence, while most of the world lives in unspeakable poverty and social misery. A social conscience is the living voice of social justice that informs us of what is right and good and true for society, not simply individuals. Morehouse's Renaissance men will possess an informed social conscience. Dr. King called such people transformed nonconformists. He wrote, "This hour in history needs a dedicated circle of transformed nonconformists. The saving of our world from pending doom will come not from the action of a conforming majority, but from the creative maladjustment of a transformed minority," end quote. Morehouse men will not only be conversant with the classics and sensitive to social injustice, but they will also become global citizens while transcending their own parochialism. To accomplish this, we seek to dramatically expand opportunities for our American students to travel outside the United States. A Ghanaian proverb declares, "Do not say that your mother's stew is the best in the world if you have never left your village." I want our Morehouse men to leave our villages and to take Morehouse values of justice, peace, community, and service to the farthest edge of the world. An important part of developing Renaissance men is equipping them to be globalists early in their careers. Consequently, Morehouse will intensify its already admirable curricular progress in the area of internationalization. Indeed, we will become a global resource for educated and ethical leaders. This aspiration is firmly rooted in our past, in the outlooks of visionary presidents like John Hope, who traveled throughout Europe during the war to check on Black troops and to build bridges of understanding. It includes the global ministry of Benjamin Mays, who served the World Council of Churches and informed the global perspective of Dr. King and generations of Morehouse students. It continued with Hugh Gloucester's efforts to expand our overseas study program. I was a beneficiary of those efforts and spent a year at the University of Durham in England. And it has continued with the recent appointment of President Emeritus Walter Massey as chairman of the Salzburg Global Seminar and a member of the Global Advisory Panel for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. our intent is to diversify further our student and faculty ranks as we prepare and challenge men of Morehouse to encounter a changing world. Now, in my opening convocation, I focused on our college seal and its Latin motto, inspired by the creation narrative in Genesis. God declared, "Let there be light," and in Latin, "Et facta est lux," and then there was light. Out of the chaos and darkness of a cataclysmic civil war, our ancestors made light by founding Morehouse in Augusta, Georgia. But the Genesis creation narrative continues beyond making light to making the rest of the natural environment, and then to making humans. After the Creator gives shape to creation, the Creator looks around and discerns that something was missing. God confers with the gathered hosts and declares, "Let us make man." In order to complete creation, God declares, "Let us make something new, make something special." The scholars have debated the meaning of this unusual first-person plural pronoun, us. To whom was the Creator referring at that particular moment? Some interpreters suggest that this is the heavenly host of cosmic and spiritual personalities. Some Trinitarian theologians suggest that it was addressed to the Son and the Spirit. But other interpreters believe it was addressed to everything that had already been created, because all of creation was infused with the divine essence. Under this hermeneutic, or interpretive posture, the Creator says to all that precedes man and all that will be necessary to support and sustain man as human, let us make man. But in our current Sitzemleben, or German for situation in life, there are forces that seem determined to unmake man. I mention only three of them briefly, and how a Morehouse education must equip Morehouse men to contest them. First, the global crisis of personal commitment and family stability that threatens our cherished relational and family foundations. If we cease to care for each other, if we lose the love of kin and of neighbor, if we fail to prioritize reviving marriage, family, and parenting in Black communities, then we will have gained the world materially while losing our souls. We will have sacrificed the gift of family and community on the altar of narcissism and autonomy. Morehouse men will be educated to nurture children, families, and communities. But second is the global rise of violence in a multitude of forms, from the senseless wars that scar our earth to the omnipresence of guns that enable people who are having bad days to turn them into tragic days for others. Here again, Dr. King said it takes a strong person to practice nonviolence in a world of violence and hate. Morehouse men will be educated as agents of peacemaking and creative conflict resolution. And third, the dehumanizing impact of technology, typified by the transformation of handheld technologies into virtual human appendages. Novelist George Orwell and filmmaker Stanley Kubrick warned of the mad evolutionary drift from primate to human to robot. But we must not allow this technology, wonderful and mystifying as it is, to dehumanize. Morehouse men will be educated to transform technology into a tool that frees us to invest quality time in community building and enjoying poetry, art, philosophy, and yes, Motown music. These and other forces caused Benjamin Elijah Mays, our sixth president, to observe, and I quote, "I am uneasy about man because we have no guarantee that when we train a man's mind, we will train his heart. No guarantee that when we increase a man's knowledge, we will increase his goodness. There is no necessary correlation between knowledge and goodness," end quote. The project of making man is the ongoing work of the Creator, and that is the work to which Morehouse is committed, making Morehouse men. But clearly Morehouse cannot do this alone. There is a role for all of us to play in the making of Morehouse men. The Morehouse College Board of Trustees must facilitate this desired creation by providing adequate resources and guidance to sustain our nascent renaissance. The faculty must midwife new creation as they lead courageous conversations about and discovery of the global classics, while also contributing to the holistic development of Morehouse students. Alumni must place their fingerprints in the clay as they support the school's mission and give of their time, treasure, and talent to ensure that our most vulnerable students can complete the last mile of their journey. The community and public must affirm our creation by recognizing that education is a free society's best investment in the future strength of civil society and our political economy. Enlightened public policy and more resources must be devoted to enabling students from low-income families to access higher education. All of our fellow institutions, represented by delegates here today, must support this creation by striving to be the best that you can be, inspiring all the others of us, and by entering into partnerships that enable different institutions to complement one another's excellence. Let all of us make man, make humans. That is why Dr. Mays was fond of quoting J.G. Holland, who prayed, "God, give us men." A time like this demands strong minds, great hearts, true faith, and ready hands. Men whom the lust for office does not kill. Men whom the spoils of office cannot buy. Men who possess opinions and a will. Men who have honor. Men who will not lie. Men who can stand before a demagogue and damn his treacherous flatteries without winking. Tall men, sun-crowned, who live above the fog in public duty and private thinking, end quote. But I like the way another anonymous poet framed the creative process, declaring that when God wants to drill a man and thrill a man and skill a man, when he yearns with all his heart to create so great and bold a man that all the world shall be amazed, watch his methods, watch his ways, how he ruthlessly perfects whom he royally elects, how he hammers him and hurts him, and with mighty blows converts him into trial shapes of clay, which only God understands. And while his tortured heart is crying and he lifts beseeching hands, how God bends but never breaks when our good he undertakes. How he uses whom he chooses, and by every act fuses, by every act induces us to try his splendor out. God knows what he's about. And so today, let us remember our traditions, our people, and our dreams. Let us reclaim our pledge, our plea, and our prayer, for God knows what we're about. Let us make men, men who in the face of fear and temptation embrace the words of C.S. Lewis, that courage is not one of the virtues, it is the form of all the virtues at the point of testing. Let us make men who understand that their strength is measured by the depth of their respect for women and their desire to nurture children. Men who respect and celebrate diversity and are secure enough not to be intimidated by the presence of different sexual orientations, but rather stand in solidarity with those who are in the minority. Men who know how to dress for leadership and service, and who will uphold the Morehouse mystique. Men who replace profanity with uplifting public discourse. Let us make men who are confident in the words of the poet Goethe, that at the moment of commitment, the entire universe conspires for your success. Let us make men who are confident of the words of Rabbi Hillel that the world is equally balanced between good and evil, and your next act will tip the scale. Let us make men, Morehouse men, Renaissance men. Up, you mighty men. You can accomplish what you will. Up, you mighty men. Let us create a brave new world.